I was just going to say, you know, let's take, for example, that notion of 2-day sprints. You know, that's something that's kind of a wild and crazy idea in the safe world. In the safe world, everybody's pretty conventional. When you roll out a safe transformation, 2-week sprints is pretty much the standard. And so, but there's no reason at all that you couldn't do different sprint durations. You could do 2-day sprints just fine. In which case you might have, God, how many sprints would that be to get through, you know, a quarter, you know, but nevertheless, it's totally legitimate. And there are some things that I really like about the open space nature of FAST that reminded me of the way that originally SAFE was introduced to some companies. There were some places where when they rolled out SAFE, what they did was they got all the teams together in one meeting for 2 days to describe SAFE and get them oriented to what they were going to do together. And then the very next day, they started the PI planning. There was no elaborate rollout. There was no, it was just an open space. It was everybody's going to get together and work it out right then and there. And so all of the hierarchical processing of things, all of it, none of that was there. It was, here is our, you know, big, hairy, audacious goal. You know, here is the thing that we want to do. Now figure it out. And you've got 2 days. And in some ways that reminded me a lot of open space in terms of setting the theme and then asking the group to come to their own understanding about how to take on that challenge. And so to me, I started to think to myself, God, that really, this SAFE has been done that way. And FAST Agile would be simply kind of going back to its roots and focusing more on the self-organization. Now, I don't think this is for everybody. I don't think you can walk into a GE, you know, and you know, a really conservative hierarchical organization and sell them on FAST Agile right off the bat. I don't think that's, you know, those folks are looking for that rigid hierarchical structure that we're all familiar with. And so there are certainly customers out there that I wouldn't even start to suggest this with. But there are others that have cultures that are much more about reflecting themselves. There are certainly places where there are cultures that are much more, look, I don't understand this role of release train engineer. In fact, I hate the term release train. And those folks tend to look at the SAFE map and go, I understand, I get the levels and all of that, but that's not us. And so for those folks are looking for something that is catered a bit more to them. And I think in those cases, maybe introducing something like FAST Agile might be very, very useful. Sharon, just raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. This is really interesting. Is it possible for you to name some of those companies that you interacted with and that are interested in FAST because it's, for example, they don't really align with the structure of SAFE? You mentioned GE for the companies that may be interested in SAFE. But have you seen local companies who are more interested into models like FAST?
I can't speak, you know, I haven't done a rollout yet where we've done FAST. So I can't address, you know, are there companies that would do SAFE and FAST together yet? And I think Ron's example of Primera is probably, you know, I think SAFE itself or FAST itself is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but it's kind of still in its infancy, relatively speaking. And so I don't know that there are a lot of examples of this. So a lot of what we're talking about today is a little bit speculative, and we are using FAST as an example, as one example of methods that you could use to be more flexible with SAFE. Because one of the things that, as someone who has done a few SAFE rollouts and launched some release trains and such, one of the things I notice is that we're kind of all doing it the same. And I think that's a problem. And I think there are certainly, when you look at smaller companies, when you look at mid-sized companies, I can give you some examples of companies that where I've taken, where I've talked about SAFe with them, and they do look at it and they say, God, that's great, Tom, but that's not really us. And so one example would be Cerner, which is a big, actually a large healthcare company, about 25,000 people in the Midwest, where they looked at this and said, well, that's fabulous, but it's not us. It's not us. We want something that represents our more entrepreneurial spirit. We want something that is a bit more flexible. And so, for them, something like this, I don't know if they would go for FAST necessarily, but at the same time, they were looking for something that was a bit more flexible and a better representation of who they were. And I think that's an important consideration in any transformation, is that we should be tailoring this to the customer. And all too often what happens is cookie cutter implementations, which I don't think do anyone any real service. So great question, great question.
Tom, I appreciate that you're pointing out that you're using FAST as an example here. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of the level of development that FAST is at, because when I first started listening, I thought, well, why couldn't you use open space agility? So right. I appreciate that you kind of clarified there. What you're talking about is really tailoring a method.
Yes, that's precisely it. And we're going to explore that just a little bit further when we start talking about mix-ins. Mm-hmm. So because I'm taking a very open-minded approach here, which is we could do this with FAST and SAFe, or look, we could do this with less and FAST. We could do this with, we can do this in a lot of different ways. And so I'm using SAFe as an example here, and I'm using FAST as an example here. But there are a lot of different ways that we could play this game, and I think we should be thinking about that.